Welcome to this Gluware tutorial on the topic of using config modeling to automate global features on a Juniper JUNOS based device. We will go over an operational use case of assigning a set of standard features including banner, DNS, snmp, and Syslog. We'll also take a look at day 2 examples of updating feature parameters. If you're taking the Gluware Test Drive, you will be able to follow along with the demonstration. If you're interested in taking the test drive to try Gluware hands-on yourself, check out gluware.com/test-drive for more information. Okay, let's get started with the tutorial. Just to get your bearings straight, a quick reminder that your Gluware instance will be highlighted here. In this case, I'm connecting to the Gluware instance of demo.gluware.com. So if you're following along with the test drive, you'll be using that same instance. Next is I'll be signing into the Gluware system with the credentials that have been provided by my administrator. If you are, again, taking this test drive, you will have received this via an email. So I go ahead and get signed in, and I land at the Gluware dashboard. A couple quick things while you're here on the dashboard. One is in the upper right-hand corner, you'll have a drop-down which shows the organization. So Gluware is a multi-tenant system. I'll be using Test Drive Pod 2 for this tutorial. And again, if you are doing the test drive, you will have been assigned a tutorial to use during your test drive. Also, if you click on this picture on the far right, you see your information that you've been signed in, and here's where you can sign out as well. So for this use case, we're going to be focusing on config modeling. The config modeling app technology is exposed through the model editor. So we're going to navigate into the model editor by clicking on that icon. So when the model editor loads, your screen probably will not look exactly like this. Gluware essentially saves the way it looked the last time you exited. So I'm going to just kind of reset the view here and make it look probably more like it would when you first log in. So a couple points of orientation here is that you have your major navigation across the top here. The ones we're going to be using quite often is this node view. So click on this box. Again, if you are somehow not in this view on the domains or something, click on the N, which brings you to the node view. And then if you want to see all the nodes in the system, you can select all types. This should show all the nodes that you have loaded in the system. For this particular demo, we're going to be focused on Juniper JUNOS based SRX devices. And in my lab instance here, I only have one, but I'm going to click on that and you'll see it filter to that. I'll also quickly point out though, if you're using a larger system with lots of devices, you can click into the filter and you can use text-based or regex-based filters here. Also, there's a drop-down for advanced filtering. So again, if you're using a much larger infrastructure of equipment in a lab or in production, those filters can come in quite handy. Also, Gluware has these kind of 3 pop-out screens on the left, right, and bottom. And if you don't see those, you float your cursor on the left side and it should pop out. My preference is to go into the settings here and pin up those views. Use the pin to pin them up so you always have them accessible. But you can have a left pop-out, a right pop-out, and a bottom pop-out as well. So one final kind of housekeeping point is that if the Gluware view is too small of a text or too large of a text, you can click in and use the web browser settings to like zoom in and get larger view, or zoom out and get it sized properly for your use. I'm going to continue here at 90% zoom since that works best for the monitor and the setup I have. Hopefully it's clear for you and you certainly can follow along with the test drive. So in this test drive and tutorial, we're going to be focused on an operational use case. We're going to take essentially features that have already been created. So as you dive into so-called features, if you navigate to the features view, you're going to see a list of features, and this is already filtered. So if you want to control your filter, expand the pop-out of the controls, and you can navigate all the features that are in the system. I'm just showing you these building blocks We're going to come back to how they all tie together, but essentially a feature is a high-level construct that keeps everything else that makes up the overall feature, and we're going to get into that. The next icon here you see is the G for globals. These globals, again, are the building blocks that make up the command sets to write and read the features that you're automating, and this will all make sense shortly. And the green D box over here are domains. These are things that are domain-wide, and they can be IP addressing plans or other information. One construct we're going to use here is called the assembly, and that's going to come into play very quickly here. So let's go back to the node view, and just for real estate purposes, I'm going to close out this control since I don't need it, but just to point out that in this view of nodes here in this system, I can see that along with when you install Gluware, you get all the vendor adapters, of which there's 23 and counting. But in addition to the vendor adapters, you install what are called config modeling kits. Those config modeling kits are made up of pre-seeded information and technology to make automating the vendors much faster for you. So especially when you're using config modeling. So in this case, I have the Juniper Networks, the SRX router config modeling kit installed. And that is important because we're going to be using a number of those constructs that come preceded in that config modeling kit. So now I can just close out that view. And what I'll also recommend from a usability point of view is you click on the node or make sure it's selected, and in your bottom pane view, bring up your node instance map by clicking on this icon. I actually wanted to start from no assembly assigned. And so this is actually what you're going to see when you see the test drive. And one other point of customization is as you're up here in your top view and you scroll across and you see all the fields and all columns exposed here, you can customize those as well. And one customization I do suggest you make is click on the cog for customization and add in the column for assembly policy. And I'll just say, you can also delete certain ones. So we're not using the description field, so you could uncheck that. So this is a way to customize what columns are available. But the assembly is pretty important when you're looking at, understanding what features are automated on a given device, especially when you're looking at a larger grid of devices. If you've run some of the other Cisco-based examples, you've seen where there's many devices, and that comes in handy. So if you're following along with the test drive, your system will look a lot like this. There will be an assembly already assigned to the device. But let's go ahead and break down how you assign an assembly and what makes up the assembly and the features. Again, as a recommended way of learning Gluware and making it a little bit easier to follow along with, the node instance map is a visualization of the data models. And you can double click on any one of the constructs you see here. In this case, I clicked on the router node or device icon, and it's showing me the instance information, all the information associated with that device as it's mapped into our system. So in the connections view, it shows exactly how Gluware is connecting to that device. I'm hopping through a proxy, has the IP information. And then a tab I want to point out that's important here we'll be using is called the associations. So when you first start with Gluware and you add nodes into your systems, the nodes are going to have no assembly associated with them. And someone in your organization is going to be determining what you're going to be automating and then ultimately building and defining the assemblies that are used. A good analogy for an assembly is like a shopping cart. And so we're going to go ahead and add our assembly back in. So I'm going to go back to associations, and in the assembly policy, there's a search bar here too. I can type S and hit enter. Sorry, I have to type out a little bit more, STAND, start typing out standard global features. It's one of the options here that pre-exists as something that's already set up. So I'm going to assign an assembly here and hit save. This particular assembly, and I'm going to click on the assembly now in the visualization here in the node instance map. As I click on that assembly, you're going to see what that assembly is made up of. And again, I briefly mentioned that it's a good analogy is like a shopping cart, where you're telling the system, you're instructing Gluware as part of that group what you're going to automate on that. In this case, it's a Juniper SRX router. I could have the same assembly assigned to dozens or hundreds or thousands of routers, and all would get the same features. So an assembly is quite powerful in that it can be assigned to many of similar devices that are going to get the same policies. What you're going to see made up here, and what's probably true for an operational role in your organization, is you're going to be working with constructs that an engineer or architect has already predefined. So in this case, we're automating the banner feature, the DNS feature, globals, which is a bucket for various things in the Juniper definitions, of which we'll go into what those are. We're going to be automating NTP, snmp, and Syslog. So if you've done the tutorial, followed the tutorial on the Cisco, it's actually very, very similar, where you're assigning those features, and then those features have policies assigned to them, and we're going to walk through those. So here we are at the assembly level. Remember, it's kind of like the shopping cart, and we're saying I'm going to automate all of these things on, in this case, one device, but it certainly could be a set of devices. As you begin to go down these constructs and walk the tree, so to speak, you can do it in a number of ways. If we're looking at banner, I can literally click on each one of these boxes and see the information. Or right from here, I can click on the go to kind of navigate me down to the next construct. So as I mentioned, the feature construct itself is like the top level container, if you will. Feature, you're defining what constructs are part of that. In this case, it's one, but it certainly could be more than one. And we also have a mechanism to provide abstraction and store variables. So a banner does not have any variables associated, so there's nothing there. Again, walking down here into the Junos Banner group, when I click Next, here I see now my banner group is going to be made up of additional things as well. Again, it's a group of one, so it just includes the next item we're going to get to here, which is the Junos Banner CLI. And there's some advanced options that we don't need to use since it's a pretty simple feature. Again, we'll walk the tree, go down to the next one. Here's where it gets, let's say, more familiar for network engineers and operators who know CLI. These next two constructs are made up of, one, the desired state of what I want written on the device, or the configured state. And so this is literally you can copy and paste vendor CLI right into the construct called CLI command list. It's literally made up of the CLI commands. And the next construct we call the concept item is seeded by Gluware. You can create these, but when you're getting started, it's easiest to use the seeded ones Gluware has created for you that are part of the config modeling kit. When I click on that, what you're going to see here is the concept item teaches Gluware how to read the configured state. So you can see here Gluware is able to execute a show system login message starting with display set. So what we're teaching Gluware is how to read the command and how to write the command, because every time you're automating with Gluware, we do a declarative mode provisioning. We read current state, we compare it to the desired state, then we check for any variables or pre-requirements or any other things that are needed, and then we add what's needed, remove what shouldn't be there, what's out of policy, and correct any statements that are incorrect. So it's much more effective than the kind of legacy or traditional open up a connection and just blast CLI and hope it stuck and not have a lot of the verification that you really need. So now that we've walked one feature called Banner, let's look at another feature. Let's look at Syslog. And when I just jump into, again, I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit. When I jump into the Syslog server commands, what you're going to see here is straight CLI, right? That Anyone who's configured a Juniper will recognize these set commands, but you're seeing something additional here. You're beginning to see the Gluware's ability to poke holes into the CLI and insert variables. So we're inserting variables for the Syslog server IPs, okay? And then where those variables are being pulled from, if we go back to the feature, again, the kind of top level bucket, we have the ability to abstract and provide those variables. So it is useful kind of using variables, because then you can have someone come and edit or use a form fill and maybe not make a mistake with CLI and semantic. You can make it more applicable maybe for operations to go in and make day 2 changes. So this particular feature is leveraging a form fill based variable where it's collecting the variables, and also we store the variables in the system. If we click on this construct for DNS, setting the DNS server, it's a straight up static set system name server 8.8.8.8. So it's really up to you as you design your features and you think about how your network is used or how your operations use it, if you use static CLI or if you incorporate variables. And then things can get even more, let's say, complex from there. There's conditionals, there are advanced conditions and others to get into to handle and deal with more specific, more, let's say, more challenging situations when you have sites that are different. So with that kind of basic overview, hopefully you understand the approach of config modeling, which is to kind of deconstruct monolithic CLI configs if you're looking at a configuration, break them down, kind of deconstruct them, but then allow you to reconstruct or build them back like Lego bricks or blocks that are assigned to an assembly, and then each one of them has a desired state, and then you can automate those down onto one or more devices. So once you're happy with your configuration, and this first step is kind of like my initial configuration, we're going to go through what is called provisioning. Provisioning is where you write these features down to the device. So I want to click on the router view itself. You want to be navigating from the node when you're provisioning, and you're going to go to the actions view. In the actions, you want to make sure the node is selected, and you're going to be on provisioning utilities, and you want to make sure it says preview features. It's a very powerful feature of Gluware that allows you to preview what's the CLI that's going to be rendered or generated to complete the automation task. So I'm going to hit start action, and I'm going to select or use the default selected connected preview, which allows the Gluware engine to execute those show statements or read current state, compare to the desired state, and then show you what it needs to do to complete the change. So we hit proceed. When you're in a provisioning activity while it's happening, you can navigate to the provisioning view, and you see provisioning is occurring here, and I can double click on this item and it will take me into the log. The log is going to show you all kinds of detailed information on the exchange between Gluware and the device, and the logging level is customizable. So if you want to remove some of the lower level Gluware commands, you can adjust there. One of the most powerful views though is to come over and click on the CLI view. The CLI view removes all the Gluware internal messaging and information, and literally shows you how Gluware is interacting directly on the command line interface. So you can see every time we touch the device, we're executing a device discovery. If you've seen the device manager, you understand we're capturing things like version and hardware information and others, or system uptime. So we're capturing a bunch of basic information that could be used for validation. We're then looking at the configured features to understand what is configured, and then you can hit the processed view to show you exactly what Gluware needs to do to get it to the desired state. So in this case, we need to write the banner, we need to set the DNS server, we need to set the domain name, which is part of the system globals. We need to set the NTP information, the full set of snmp information, and the syslog information. So if I'm happy with my preview here and I want to take these settings and write them down to the node, I navigate back to the the actions view here, and I change from preview to provision features. And now this action will actually commit the change down to the network node, and I click start action and I hit proceed. So now it's actually writing it down to the node. And what I want to point out for you as well is I like, when I'm actually doing a provisioning, especially at scale, I like to view, slide over into this view here on the grid, because the grid is built for summary level, where you can see I'm automating 6 features. Now and it's going to walk through what Gluware is doing. So if I'm doing a bunch of these at a time, I can watch the status and see it cycle through each of the features it's automating. And the goal of the Gluware engine is to synchronize the desired state for every feature down to what is actually happening on the network layer. So you can see here it's on the NTP feature, and it's provisioning. Now it's provisioning snmp. And again, it's going to cycle through those. It's on 5 out of 6. And now Syslog is the last feature it's provisioning in this case. And now the node has been fully provisioned and it's synchronized, meaning all of the configuration I'm automating through Gluware has been pushed down to the node. So that node is fully automated. So kind of part 1 in this use case is done, which is to push down a set of global features in a declarative manner and automate this Juniper router. Next, as a follow-up, we're going to say, what does it look like to update or make, let's say, day 2 changes? So let's say a day 2 change is to go into DNS, and actually we're going to change 8.8 to 8.8.4.4. Those of you familiar with the Google name servers, I'm just switching from one to the other, and I hit save. Another change we'll make is if I click on NTP, I can see NTP is pulling its NTP servers from a variable list. So for that, I'm going to come over to the form fill by clicking on the features view and click on configurations. And I'm going to change this to a value just 2.2.2.2. Okay, and hit save. So again, in this use case, kind of a day 2 update, I've updated a name server, and I've changed my NTP server, and I've saved those constructs. Now I have 2 features that I've updated, and I want to push down to the network layer. So before I push those down, if you navigate from a non-node, you're going to have this view where it's not showing the node. Now we built in an interesting feature here, which is retrieve provisionable nodes, and so it will pull you into the node view, and you can switch over to the node view. But basically, anytime you're doing a preview or provisioning, you do need to be in the node view, so you're selecting the appropriate nodes. And again, I'm going to do a preview of this feature and hit start. So I'm expecting to see, the Gluware engine understand that most of this does not need to be rewritten down to the network node. But what I do expect to see is the DNS and the NTP change. So I can double click into this guy, go to the CLI view, and then hit processed. And I can see here I'm removing the now out of policy 8.8.8.8. You didn't see me type a delete statement. The Gluware engine knows how to remove commands that are not part of the policy. And I'm adding in 8.8.4.4. And then you can see here I'm removing the old NTP server 10.4.2.123, and I'm adding 2.2.2.2. So that gives you a perspective. And then there's some statements that are maybe added in by default or whatever that we're adjusting on the syslog. That some statements might need to get added each time you provision, and that's kind of common for syslog or some other features. So you can see clearly here that Gluware is able to do that. So the next step would be to go ahead and provision these features, and I just go ahead and click on actions. Now that I'm comfortable with the change, I change from preview to provision, and I hit start action and proceed. And again, the tip of you can change your windowing here and make sure you can see your slider bar. And I'm going to change from all types to my SRX. I only have that one Juniper router in this test bed, and I can see it cycle through the features that we're automating here through DNS, and it's going to go through NTP in the system globals and Banner. And again, if you are provisioning lots of nodes, Gluware will do this in parallel across the nodes. It's a highly scalable platform where you can have many provision engines, as many provisioning engines spun up as you need to meet the scale and capacity of your network. And here it's on the second to last feature with snmp. And then finally with Syslog being the last feature it's automating. And it's not complete. So with that, just to kind of wrap up, hopefully you understand the concepts, the basic concepts of Gluware config modeling, which is kind of deconstructing monolithic config into creating policies, and teaching the Gluware engine from an automation standpoint what to write from a CLI command list and how to read it from a concept item, and then enabling you to preview your change and provision your change down to the network layer. And hopefully you're paying attention in that I didn't type any Python, I didn't do any coding. This is really built for operations and network engineers that want to automate and understand CLI, but don't necessarily have programming skills. So it's quite powerful. And with that, it concludes the demonstration.